Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from LexisNexis, the family law imprint. It's an important book, this one, and it's been around for a long time. It's Jackson's Matrimonial Finance, and it's now in its 10th edition, and it's been edited by Clive, Newton Queen's Counsel, and Deepak, Nagpal. I think it's a very important book for anybody who's at the family bar, dealing specifically with what has been happening in very recent times, the changes concerning financial remedies, and the creation of the Financial Remedies Court in particular. This book, of course, was written a little while ago, and there have been a lot of changes taking place since. I've given the title of this book probably the most detailed work on matrimonial finance available. Obviously things are changing even now with the whole concept of family law, and I would like eventually to see a lot of this difficulty in terms of property being dealt with in a rather different environment from the court system. I do realise the court has to be there, but the cases I do find it very difficult sometimes to see why we need to have that type of structure for what is really rather different from the mainstream types of legal work. And I obviously feel very strongly that family law is an area that should try to avoid coming to court wherever possible, although I realise that that's sometimes a little bit of a pipe dream. Now this is the book here. It's a hardback. There we go, there's the front, there's the spine, there's nothing on the back. It's a very heavy book, very detailed, very much the structure of LexisNexis. What you've got here, you've got about 1,500 pages. The index at the back is by paragraph numbering, so it's not by page numbers, it's paragraph numbering. So when you look at the beginning of the index, it doesn't actually tell you that, but it is actually paragraph numbering itself. So of course the first couple of digits are the chapter number, then of course it's the paragraph number in there. You can see the back of the book there, just going into the main bit. Huge amount of information all the way through. That's the Hague Convention countries. These are practice directions, all part of the family procedure rules. Let's go to the front. There's the actual front page. There is a specialist team of writers. It does say, while every care has been taken to ensure the accuracy of this work, no responsibility for loss or damage occasioned to any person acting or refraining from action as a result of any statement in it can be accepted by the authors, editors or publishers. So there we are. Obviously they feel they have to put that in. Now, can I just say there's a very nice dedication. We only review books we like. This is a first-class book, and I do think it's important because a lot of people are involved in it. Now, Clive and Deepak have produced a preface at the end of 2019. This is really to talk about the developments that have taken place. Now, obviously, it's been a couple of years since the book appeared. It went to press at the end of 2019, just as COVID was hitting us, in the week before the general election. And again, he's talking at that time of continued uncertainty over Brexit. He doesn't really talk about COVID because it wasn't happening at that time. You've then got an extract from the first edition which sets out the purpose all those years ago now. And it's funny enough, when you look at it, it was 1972 when Joseph Jackson wrote the preface to the first edition. 1972, that's 50 years ago. Divorce has become less about divorce and more about money. That's what he said then. Of course now it really is about money, and of course you've now got, since this was written, no fault divorce, so things have changed again very dramatically. You've got a list of contributors there. I can't go through them in detail, but they are there. You can see their names, because these are experienced practitioners. And then you've got the content section, the various chapters running all the way through. There's a lot of detail in each of the chapter headings. You can see there's chapter 14. Now you can see how much detail is there. So you can actually compare this with the index at the back, because again, this content section is a very substantial part of the book. And then there are 4 appendices at the back. Then you've got the statutes, which you can just see there, statutes. Then after that, you've got the cases, all the cases, of course, in this area of law. Then after that, and just get to the end of it, you then get to the introductory material. There's a lot in this book, as I say, but that's actually page 1 there, but you see the huge amount of stuff. That's the statutes and the all the other bits and pieces, the statutory instruments and the European legislation as well, all of that included. But it goes on to talk about the scope of the book. In the preface to the first edition, Jackson wrote, "This book is about money, about the economics of matrimonial breakdown in all its many aspects. It is a new book intended for all those concerned with matrimonial finance and taxation, and in particular, it is concerned with the principles applied by the courts in considering these matters." And I think that's quite important, because he refers to the Family Procedure Rules 2010. Remember, they came in much further along the line from the original edition. And then he talks about the creation of the new authors talk about the creation of the single family court. That was in 2014. Then it goes on and talks about how everything is now organised. And then as you go through the book, you will see there is some footnoting at the bottom as you run all the way through. There's a huge amount of reference to case law as well. As I say, I think this is a very important book. It's one that's probably out of date to some people now, because there have been so many new things happening. But let me just in this short review say that the new 10th edition, edited by Clive Newton and Deepak Nagpal, remains an authoritative specialist text which covers all aspects of financial problems arising from the breakdown of a marriage. Now, I've just done a couple of cases recently. I haven't had to refer to this particular book, because every case is different. But when you're starting to look at really substantial difficulties, a lot of it is not really about law. It's about marshalling all the facts in the case, trying to negotiate and trying where possible to get the parties to agree, because the difficulty generally, of course, is a complete lack of agreement. Even with mediation doesn't work really, and quite often if the parties are actually completely embedded one side or the other, there's not a lot you can do. The new edition, of course, which came out 2 years ago, brings the content fully up to date. Remember, the first edition was 50 years ago, so it's got a long pedigree. Obviously, the recent developments cover the following reforms that I've indicated about family law procedure. That's the introduction of the Single Family Court, which came in as a result of the Crime and Courts Act 2013. Then, of course, you've got the Children and Families Act 2014, which gave support for those whose parents are separating. Again, a very important area, but remember the children always come first, then it's the financial stuff afterwards. Then the introduction of child arrangement orders, CAOs, to replace the residency and contact orders, which of course in many ways has simplified the system, but it does take a bit of explaining to the parties as to what it means. Then we've got a number of cases that are referred to, and some of the effects of pension reform. As I say, the hardback 10th edition came out just round about the time of the last general election in 2019, and an awful lot of things have happened since then with the COVID pandemic, which has caused chaos throughout the whole of the world, and obviously that has had a major effect even in this country, where until relatively recently, when I was dealing with these types of disputes, they were adamant in the court service that these would be by Zoom. It doesn't work. It really does not work. You have to have the people there to try to ease the pain of who gets what when you split up the matrimonial financial cake. if I can put it that way. Anyway, I found this book to be very good. There it is again. There's the front. There's the spine. And I'm just opening it up in the middle. I've talked about a number of things. This is the structure of Talata, Trusts of Land and the Appointment of Trustees Act. Talata is quite important. I've got a case, again, dealing initially with Talata, because that is to try to force an issue where there is just complete disagreement on everything. But that was a useful act in 1996. Capital gains tax always comes into these matters, and that can be a deciding factor, of course, when it comes to matrimonial finance and any settlements, which are either imposed or which you can get agreement on. And then you've got a whole range of things like enforcement procedures, which are something I think you really would want to run away from. But this is a useful area when in fact you have a problem concerning the problems of trying to enforce an agreement which has had to be imposed. I'd like to thank everybody, especially LexisNexis, for this particular book. It's the family law imprint. One of the reasons that I like these books so much is they make our lives much easier. I come from an era 50 years ago when I first read law at university, where the problem then was there weren't very many books available. Books like this were just coming into the system. And some of the books in those days were really not very well written. They were not easy to read. And there was a mystique about the legal profession. The bar in those days, I mean, when I was called, it was 5,000 strong. About 2,000 barristers in those days. Now it's 17,000. So times have gone by very quickly. But I'd like to thank everyone, and especially the publishers, for keeping going with these books and making our lives much easier. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.